Welcome to The Business Strategist, the show for CEOs and founders ready to scale fast, lead smarter, and build a business that doesn't rely on them. I'm Adam Strong, award-winning strategist, former elite athlete, international speaker, and 3 times best-selling author. After 3 decades in business, I know exactly what it takes to grow, scale, and exit with impact. Each week, I dive into real conversations with industry experts, bold entrepreneurs, and clients navigating the uphill struggles of business, giving you the tools and the strategies to create more profit, more freedom, and more impact. Let's get into it.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. When you visit the doctor, you probably hand over your insurance, your ID, and contact details. It's just one of the many places that has your personal info. And if any of them accidentally expose it, you could be at risk for identity theft. LifeLock monitors millions of data points a second. If you become a victim, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year at lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
What if your greatest advantage isn't tactic, it's not a strategy or any particular market trend, but something that you have forgotten how to access? Now, in today's guest, she doesn't just help elite founders like yourself unlock their next level, she shows them how to remember who they really are. Now, I'm thrilled to have the amazing Taryn Voget, now the founder of the Genius Lab and the host of the Everyday Genius Show. Now, for the last 15 years, she has basically been the secret weapon behind some of the most visionary leaders on this planet. And from billion-dollar founders to startups to masterclass creative spiritual leaders, Taryn's genius really lies in showing people the genius that they didn't even know even existed. Now, this is going to sound fluffy. It isn't fluffy stuff. We're going to go in deep. It's going to be grounded. It's going to change your perspective on how you see yourself as a founder. So if you ever hit a wall, if you ever feel disconnected, or maybe at the moment you feel a bit disaligned, or you're scaling too fast and something is a little bit off, then what you're about to hear might be the next chapter, what you really need to look for. So today, what are we going to be talking about? Well, we're going to be talking a little bit about what the ideology of what the genius is, but more importantly, we're going to be talking a little bit about how to disrupt subconscious patterns. We're also going to be talking a little bit about how to become more self-aware on how to tap into that genius. Now, there are some great examples of genius people when it comes to mind. We're going to talk about people that spring to mind, what makes them so unique in what they do. But more importantly, how you can actually tap into your own genius, okay? And how it applies to you. And we're also going to have a little bit of fun, hopefully, towards the end. So without further ado, Taryn, welcome to the show.
I'm so thrilled to be here, Adam. Thank you so much for having me today.
Great stuff. Looking forward to, it's a really, I was going to say to you, just off the cusp there, it's a really unusual topic. It's not something that we've spoken about so much, especially with a lot of our listeners that are kind of like rushing around like headless chickens most of the time, right? And either are working in high scale, fast growing companies or scale ups or whatever it is. We begin to forget to know who we are and what we're about. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. And I see this happening a lot, especially with founders, is there's so much to do and you have to wear so many hats that it's really easy to lose track of your own signal sometimes just in the getting stuff done.
Yeah, no, I totally get that 100%. I think entrepreneurs and founders, we go through these, what I call transitional phases. Now, I like to have what I call aha moments. I don't know if you ever have those, but you probably do, being a kind of a right brain creative. But I tend to have these aha moments. But every time I have an aha moment, I tend to write it down on a piece of paper because I never want to forget it, because I'm a little bit left brained. And sometimes I just, when you're thinking about something and you forget it and you're like, oh, damn it, should have written it down. But anyway, off the cuff now. Let's get straight into it, because I want to kind of go in slowly first of all, and then we're going to get a little bit more advanced. But tell us a little bit more what you said off air, and also with some of the content that you put out there, is that everyone is kind of a genius in themselves, but I suppose they haven't been shown how to see it within themselves. Can you break that down for some of our listeners who feel maybe stuck or they feel disconnected from what they actually want?
So I've spent the last 15 years deconstructing how genius actually works. And I built a Genius Lab to do that because what I realized happens is that when people get really good at something, it happens very quick in their mind, and they can't slow it down enough to see how they actually do what they do. And then secondarily, when you're trying to learn from somebody who's really good, they have no idea how they actually do it. They might know bits and parts and they can tell you pieces of it, but the real difference that makes a difference is something that's very quick and subconscious. And so I built the Genius Lab to unpack and deconstruct that because I was just curious how people get such incredible results. And in the process of that, I discovered how genius actually works and what the elements of genius are. But I think people have a really skewed notion of what a genius is. I think a lot of people have this idea that you can measure genius on an IQ test. And there's a whole history to even how the IQ test came about. But in my experience, the IQ test has really nothing to do with what I would call an everyday genius. And one thing I discovered is that genius and passion are so tightly linked that I've really never in all my years met someone who is what you might call operating at genius level without a lot of passion and excitement for what they do. It's like the fuel, but it also creates a lot of other really great things when you're in that energy. And one of the challenges I think with founders, and I work with a lot of founders and I work with a lot of CEOs of scale-up companies, is that it's really easy to lose that spark when you're so busy doing so many things. And so a lot of times I feel like my greatest service is to help people come back to that spark within them and to really operate from their own zone of genius, because you're going to get such better results when you do.
Yeah, totally. I can totally resonate with what you're saying. With what you're saying, 100%. Yeah, I do believe that kind of from my perspective, and I'm just kind of quoting from personal experiences. For me, I think the reason why there's a multitude of different reasons. Number one is self-awareness being one of them, or a lack of self-awareness, should we say. But number two is that if you don't have the bandwidth to kind of like to identify what that looks like. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I've had so many conversations with founders that said, I feel like I'm doing really well, but something's not quite right. Like it just doesn't feel aligned. There's a disconnect. I've had it before. I mean, for those people that are listening in that are in that realm right now, what do you do for them? Like, how do you get them back on the rails?
There's a couple of categories of people. So the one that we're talking about right now is you're maybe a founder or CEO and you're doing your thing and you maybe even doing it for a year or 10 years, doesn't really matter how long, but you feel kind of unfulfilled by it. There's that point where you're like, God, I'm busy, but I'm not like, oh, I love this still. Or I'm not feeling like I'm just in my own zone of genius. That's like a feeling you have. And so in that case, so for that category, I think my coaching is often around, okay, well, how can you get back there? And the answer is different for everybody, but you see themes after a while. And some of the themes are, it's just really easy to think that you need to do it all. And so how can you get creative, even if you're resource constrained, about either stopping it altogether and just not doing it, which is hard for a lot of people, myself included. It's finding a way to outsource it to a staff member, an overseas agency, whatever. There's a million ways to do that. Or find a way to actually love it. Because sometimes that's the answer, right? Like you think you're like, oh, this is a drag, but if you could just kind of tweak your mindset, you could actually love it. And so it depends on the person, but there's really different strategies to kind of get rid of a lot of the busy work, because there's like a tilt that happens, like let's say that, 100% of the time you're doing what you love and you just can't wait. And every minute is just pure excitement and pure joy. Like that's at 100. And then the 0 is, oh my God, I hate my life. I just need to be done with this. Most founders and CEOs are probably somewhere more in the middle. They love half of it and half of it's kind of a drag, right? And 50-50 is not a terrible ratio. When it tilts over to like 60% that you don't love, that's when you start to get in burnout land, because doing what you don't love is the trajectory for burnout. I know, because I've been there 3 times in my life, very seriously. It's the passion that is a regenerative energy, and doing what you don't love is like a burnout energy. And so keeping that ratio right is really how you can keep going longer over time.
Mm. Going back to your personal experience around burnout, because I wouldn't say that I've experienced burnout full out compared to maybe someone like yourself that has experienced it 3 times. Is it just about the fact that you're doing work that that doesn't align to you? Or is it the fact that you're just doing shit that just you shouldn't be doing? Like, what is the combination to that? And how does that relate back to genius?
I've thought a lot about this very deeply because it's really been a pattern of mine. I used to date this guy, God, this is years ago, and he'd call me an extremist. He's like, God, you're such an extremist. You do things extreme. Like we'd be in the car and I would like move the air conditioning all the way to hot if I was like a little bit too cold, you know? And so I think it has been in my past part of my personality to be extreme. And I would just go full tilt. When I graduated from college, I went into consulting. I worked for Accenture, and then I started my own consulting firm. And these are really big, global, massive, complex projects that were 80-hour work weeks. And I did that for, a decade. And so I just went hard tilt on that. And then I founded the Everyday Genius Institute, which was really my own time. I did my own first creation of my own business, and I went hard tilt on that. And those weren't even 80-hour weeks. Those were 100-hour weeks. And I've really thought deeply about this because in this next phase, I'm very committed to being more balanced. But I think what happens is that we operate from a place of ego, and that's what causes burnout. And the ego is this place of, I need to prove this to myself. I need to prove this to others. I want to be perceived as good. I want to be a success. Like it's coming from this place of ego. And I don't mean ego is a bad thing, because sometimes that provides an incredible amount of fuel to do great things. But in my experience, it's also when you're working really hard from that place of ego, it is the path to burnout. And I think most of us have been there at some point. This phase, I'm much more conscientious about, and I'm doing it from a much more aligned place and excited place, and very conscious. The minute I start feeling overwhelmed or overworked and it's not fun, I just stop. And I was like, Taryn, you're in it for the long haul. Just stop. You can pick this back up tomorrow. Nothing's going to change. And so it's just a longer term view without so much ego involved. And that just comes from decades of experience and not wanting to go through that burnout again, because it takes a long time to recover from a really deep burnout.
Yeah. Have you found any relationship between people that want to tap into the genius and for someone that is, should we say, working all of those long hours, 100 hours and 80 hours, whatever it is? Have you found any correlation between people that become more aligned or become more distant from their genius?
So let's talk about what genius actually is, and then I'm going to answer your question because it needs a little backdrop here. So really, if you think about genius is really about focus over time. Now, in order to have a lot of focus over time, there needs to be some passion there and so I think genius is really about 3 elements coming together. And I think of genius more as a verb than a noun. Like you are geniusing, and we're all geniusing at some level. And genius is when 3 things come together. It's some kind of passion or excitement or curiosity for what we're doing. I just call it passion to keep that simple. It's getting great strategy, like the how we do it. And strategy comes with focus over time, meaning you get to be a great tennis player because you've put in a million matches. You get to be a great entrepreneur because you've been doing it for a while. Whatever it is, it's just really hard to go from 0 to great overnight. It takes time. Strategy, how you do it, is that middle element. So passion plus strategy. And then this is where the magic of genius comes in. It's what I call channeling. And it sounds mystical, but we all channel, meaning we're channeling something through us, whether it's an idea. A lot of people talk about writing and being in a flow state. Some people talk about it being in the zone where time stops and you're in that zone. And we all have experiences of that in our own way, but it's really where it's almost like something comes through you rather than you are the doer of it. And those are when really genius moments or insights or ideas come. So passion plus great strategy plus channeling, when those things come together, that is genius. Now, what looks to the outer world like you are a genius is when those 3 things come together often enough. And usually that just takes a bit of time. Now, you can have these sort of moments of genius, but I really don't know very many people, including young people, that haven't been doing it for a long time to get those kind of results. And so when we talk about overworking or burnout, it's not that all 3 of those elements aren't necessarily present, because they very much can be. But I would say, what's the driver for that passion? So the driver for the passion can be really like, this is my deepest joy, my deepest excitement. It thrills me. It lights me up. It's like you you don't want to do anything but that because it's just so fun and cool. That's a great driver. The driver I've often experienced in my own life is a bit of that, but more of, and I need to prove it to myself and to others that like I'm great, some version of that pattern. And so when it comes from that energy, you can still have absolutely genius results. It often leads to more of a rapid path to burnout in my experience. But the other thing is also true is sometimes we're not burned out because we're operating from that place of like, I just call it ego, and I don't mean ego is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just kind of like, that's like an energy. Sometimes we're just done with that version where we're like, we pushed hard, we did it, we exhausted everything we wanted to learn or gain or experience, and now we're ready for something else. And so it just loses interest to us because we're ready for a different expression. And so that often happens. People say, oh, I'm burned out. Well, you might be burned out, but you also just might be ready for something new.
Yeah, I agree on that, actually. Interesting. I just had I'm going to share my epiphany with you. In terms of characteristics and to be able to allow yourself, you talked about passion. I love the passion strategy and channeling. My thought is you've got to allow yourself to be open-minded enough and to get out of a comfort zone in order to discover this, I'm assuming, well, from my perspective, but also, I mean, human beings, when it comes to change, we're habits of creature type of thing. And so sometimes humans find it very difficult. Founders, entrepreneurs, we find it very difficult to change. Do we have to allow ourselves to be able to change and to allow ourselves to accept that if we want to tap into this, new power, this superpower that you're talking about, do we have to allow ourselves to say, okay, well, I've discovered this. What do I do? Do I park it to one side, or do I go, all in type of thing? What do we need to have within ourselves? Is there anything else that you want to add further to what I just added?
So this is what I was saying earlier. Passion has a lot of great benefits, and you've got to kind of think about this. People might call this woo-woo, but it's really just physics. So if you think about your feelings and your emotions, sad is like bummed out, and you're sad and it's kind of low, and it's really hard to have a good idea when you're feeling all bummed out. When you're excited and you're jazzed and you just love what you do and you can't wait, ideas are like popcorn. They often just pop and epiphanies pop. And why is that? It's because you're in a higher vibrational state. You're literally vibrating higher, faster. And in that place, you make, first of all, better connections like with other people, like synchronicity is greater in that kind of energy. And also you're more tapped into higher dimensional frequencies. And this is where we kind of get into quantum physics, right? If we all exist in a field of all possibilities, which we do, and you're operating at a higher vibrational state, you can access more of what is available. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It's kind of like quantum physics if you think about it. And so being in passion and excitement raises your energy to just access a lot more. But here's the kind of funny paradox of what it also does is when you are operating at a higher vibrational state, let's just call it a more light-filled state, you're happier, you feel lighter, you're excited. What does that do? It shines a light on all of the shadow within you. It's kind of like if you're in a dark room and the room is dark and you light a candle. What's that going to do? It's going to start casting shadow. And as you raise the light in the room, the shadow becomes even more pronounced. And so it's a funny paradox that the higher the light, the more the shadow is seen, until at a certain point, the light is so bright, it kind of disintegrates the shadow. Uh-huh. But that is the process of transformation. And so that the crazy paradox of operating from your passion is that it actually starts to bring up all of your shadow, all of those parts within you that are ready for a transformation, all the limiting beliefs you have, all of the patterns that are ready to be rewired, all of that kind of negative self-talk that you have. When you are more in your light or in your passion, it brings up more of your shadow to be transmuted back into the light. And so this is why I say entrepreneurship is actually probably the most spiritual path there is, because entrepreneurship, the business decisions aren't the hard decisions. Emotional management is what's hard. And why is that? Most entrepreneurs are excited about what they're doing. They're in that higher vibrational state. What's that doing? It's bringing up all of their fears, all of their limiting beliefs, all of their, am I good enough? All of their, oh my God, I'm amazing. Oh my God, nobody loves this. It's just this constant emotional management, because that's what the light does, is it brings up that shadow. And so entrepreneurs are on the ultimate spiritual journey of transformation into this incredible next version of themselves, if they can handle the emotional part. And so I think that's what I'd say about Genius is, in some ways, it's a path not for the faint of heart, because it just requires, in order to keep getting to the next level and the next level and the next level, to transmute the lower levels into a better version of yourself, to change those limiting beliefs and all that inner dialogue.
Well, I like to call that entrepreneurial evolution. So,
great term.
Yeah. By the way, you won't see that on Wikipedia, ladies and gents, by the way. I just made that up on the spot, for full disclosure. But I think it really describes, the journey that you're breaking it down, because, again, we go through transformational shifts, right? And what it makes us as the person, but, you're evolving. You're constantly evolving. I certainly am not the same person as I was 10, 15 years ago, let alone 6 months ago. And I'm sure you're exactly the same, right?
Parents of twins, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Yeah, and I just find this to be true. Maybe that's why I like working with entrepreneurs so much, is because it really is a path of growth. And you learn a lot on the business front, but I find that the business decisions are often not where people get jammed up. It's the other stuff that is ready for growth and transformation. And when you're on the entrepreneurial journey or the founder journey, it's just a very rapid path of growth and self-discovery. And then this is where we were talking about earlier. Founders can get kind of jammed up because you can hit a wall sometimes, and then you've got to have a breakthrough and make some changes in order to get past that.
Yep, I agree on that. You talked about energy, but you also talked, without kind of being woo-woo, spirituality in a way, what I call spiritual energy. You've got spiritual, but then it's not just intellectual, but for people that are used to like systems and metrics and numbers, how do you help them shift there to a deeper awareness of what we're talking about today? Because, we all have different personalities. We are wired differently, aren't we? Any thoughts about that?
Things can be true at the exact same time, meaning we can be both spiritual and deeply practical, would manage our metrics and our KPIs and all of that, right? All of this can be true at once. What I find is interesting is some people just get really jazzed and passionate about numbers. Like that is what lights their fire. And so they design businesses around a lot of data, a lot of metrics, a lot of that kind of thing. Other people, that's just not their jam. My sister is a genius baker and she has a wildly successful bakery. She doesn't track a damn thing, not the cost of butter, nothing. And she is crushing it. She's just in her zone of genius and she just makes great things that people love. So there's so many ways to be successful. What I think is the common thread is where it excites you is where you lean in, because you can be successful at anything in any way. And that's why, it's really easy to get twisted up as an entrepreneur of, oh, well, this person had this blueprint, and if I follow their blueprint, I could have their results. Well, no, you can't, because that might not be your jam and your passion and your excitement. Sometimes it's taking those insights in and saying, would this light my fire to do it this way?
It's a good point. Yeah, very good point. It's interesting you talk about numbers. My other half, she's super passionate about numbers. Like, give her a spreadsheet, she's like super hunky dory. Give me a spreadsheet, I'm running a mile. But that's our genius. Anyway,
and you can be successful both ways, right? Because you're both operating in your place of excitement where a lot of great things can happen, and you optimize in those spaces.
Yep, absolutely. Let's talk about subconscious strategy. How do you help founders specifically identify the invisible patterns that's driving their behavior? Like what happens when they kind of finally see what you're all actually talking about?
So for me, it's, if I were to say I had a genius, it's that I'm really good at just intuitively seeing it. So if I have someone that I'm working with or a team I'm working with, but let's just pretend it's a founder or CEO, they come to me with a problem, Taryn, this is what happened or that, and we'll have a conversation, and then it just leaps out at me kind of what the underlying issue is. And I will give you a great example of what just happened in a coaching call last week with a client. So I've got this client, he's starting a new business. He's a very successful executive, but he's starting his own company. And we were talking, and he's just going to be successful. He just kind of has that it factor. But what I realized after 20 minutes of conversation was that he needed to shift his mindset from being, a CFO to a CEO. And that's a mindset shift. And it wasn't anything he said. It was just something that I just intuitively picked up on. I'm like, oh, he's still not the leader yet. He needs to be the leader. Right. And so we did a transformation process. And this is something I do in my coaching calls is I do it real time, and we make very deep transformation very quickly, and, just helped him upgrade his mindset to that. I had another client that was, she has her own business, and, she's just been really jammed up on some stuff, and her thing is a lack of focus. So she just does too many fingers and too many pies, and it's just really diluted.
I'm going to kind of put a spanner in the works here. And I suppose I want to challenge, in what you do. And I suppose the first thing that comes to my mind is, why should anyone care about what we're talking about? How is it relevant to them? Why is it so important to be able to learn about what we're talking about? And again, I'm just thinking about relevance, and I'm just thinking about, why the average person should care. Hey guys, I just wanted to grab your attention because we've just created a brand new resource for you guys called the Exit Playbook, how to shift from operator to visionary leader. Now, this was based on a podcast that I did a few months ago, and is the leadership blueprint for being able to help yourself successfully exit your business. Now, we go into many different things. We're going into some of the common symptoms of why founders get trapped in operations and what to look for and the impact that it actually has on you. We also go into some deep dive exercises that addresses some of the fears, some of the reflections, also how to basically let go of some of the control that you have. But more importantly, how to shift your identity within your business and how to align your strategy to your exit and how to challenge your belief systems, more importantly. Listen, it is a free playbook. The link is in the show description notes. Enjoy. I think you're going to find it a really useful resource. Take care.
Well, I'll tell you a great story, and it's about my dad. So my dad is probably my greatest, he's just like my greatest human on the planet. I love him. He's also been my greatest teacher without realizing it. He had a semiconductor business. And since I was pretty little, I went to go work with him. And that's where I learned how to file things alphabetically and send out checks and deal with, vendor calls and all the things. And he started off with a passion. And over time, it was just a tough business. It was successful some months and not successful other months, and payroll was a struggle half the time, and it was just like never a really thriving business. But he had 6 kids, and he just kept day in, day out showing up and plugging away. And he'd always have this saying. He said, Taryn, when my ship comes in, then we're going to go on that vacation. When my ship comes in, then we're going to do this great thing. And it was always when my ship comes in. Well, here's the crazy story about my dad. He showed up every day. He is so consistent. But he wasn't happy. He started having a lot of lower back pain, and he went in for some surgeries, and it never really fixed it. Well, anyway, his ship did come in, and it was a crazy story how it happened. It was, if you remember 2008 or 2009, the financial crisis? It was a month before it hit, because it was also a month before his 65th birthday.
Holy crap.
And in some galaxies, not just universes aligning, like universes and galaxies and like multiverses aligning, he sold his company for a metric ton of money, a company that was worth nothing really. And somehow, I don't know how, his ship came in and he sold it for a whole bunch of money right before the financial crisis and right before his 65th birthday. After the financial crisis, they didn't sell these companies. I think it was 2 years before another deal was done in that space. So it was just this crazy timing. But here's the sad part of the story. So, we threw him a retirement party. We had this big blowout at Cavallo Point in Sausalito. It was this really fun thing. And he never once, not even one day, was able to enjoy it because his health was just garbage. Like his back was so bad he couldn't stand up. And lower back pain, they talk about this in sort of metaphysical circles, is related to financial stress. And he had a lot of it, raising 6 kids and all this. And here he is retiring at 65 with all the money he ever needed. Finally, his ship came in and he couldn't enjoy it. And it's been like this for 15, 18 years now. And, what did he do? He spent money renovating his house, and he just has a bigger castle with which to be miserable in. Not because he's mentally miserable. He's just physically so miserable. And I thought, well, that sucked. I mean, yeah, we all went to college and he provided for his family, but I guess there's like a point in that, but he's been so physically unwell because he just never focused on doing what excited him. He just did it because he felt like he had to. And so while on the one hand you think, okay, well, the story has a happy ending. He sold his company for a lot of money, but did it? His health is absolute garbage. He hasn't enjoyed a dime of it. He's been completely miserable for 18 years. And quite frankly, he was pretty miserable for 50 of it because it was a company that he just didn't really enjoy after the first bunch of years. So, like I'm grateful for what he was able to provide, but I'm sad for his journey because I think it could have been different had he done more of what he was passionate about, made different decisions, had better coaching to help him kind of make some adjustments along the way. And it just would have been more thriving and not just this big payout at the end that he couldn't enjoy.
That's a great story. I was speaking with, this must have been about 18 months ago. I was speaking with a founder, and he'd been doing this business for, I don't know, 35, 40 years. I'm just trying to think of the industry. I think he was in financial advisory, something like that, wealth management stuff. When you speak to someone and you can see that their energy is just all gone, and you go in there and he wants some help, but that it's just like the batteries have they need to be recharged, right? They're just gone. Do you know what I'm saying? And I thought, okay, well, that was a positive call. And it was just like the guy just was he had such a fixed mindset that the way that he was doing what he did, that was the best course of action. And I just said, well, how's that working out for you for the next 35, 40 years? You're going to continue to do what you do. But also, do you believe that there's an element of, and again, going back to your dad and the chap that I was just talking about, do you think they're so fixated on the ship comes in, right? But then there's an element of luck. Come on, there's luck out there, right? Whatever the universe is going to reward you for your hard work. But then there's the point where, when do you give up? Like, when do you just throw the towel in? And I just can't quite understand the psychological element of, yeah, I know I need to provide for my family, but then they can't see the bigger picture. Do you see what I mean? Like, I see it all the time. People destroying their health, but they can't enjoy their wealth. And it doesn't matter if you're in entrepreneurship. It doesn't matter if you're in corporate America, whatever it is, exactly the same pathway over and over again. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, fear is a powerful thing. And I'm really passionate about helping people shift belief systems because, in the case of my father, the belief was, well, I can't start over and make this kind of money. I can't do what I really love. And because I've got too many people relying on me. Like, he had a lot of beliefs. And in his mind, it was so true. There was no other way. And I think a lot of us get stuck in this. Now, it might not be that for me because I'm pretty good at pivoting, but other things in my life I am rigid about, and it's because it's like, oh, well, that's the only way it can be done. And so fear is a real thing, and it keeps us in patterns that don't serve us. And so a lot of my work is helping people rewire those beliefs and break through those fear points, because on the other side is a breakthrough that is so much better than the reality that you're living. This is why people don't leave their partners. They're absolutely, utterly miserable in a marriage. And yet they're like, well, I won't be able to support myself. And, it's better this misery than starting over. And so they tell themselves all these stories that somehow this misery is better than the unknown. And yet walking through that fear of like, well, maybe the unknown is scary, but what if on the other side is everything I ever wanted? A lot of people just don't have that courage in their heart to do it, or they haven't found the right person to help them hold their hand through a process to get there.
Based on your work, what would you say is maybe one habit or one limiting belief that you see within founders or CEOs that's blocking themselves from discovering their genius?
That's hard because everybody's so unique and everybody's on their own journey. But if I were to say that I see patterns every now and again with that, the pattern of a founder is often I need to do it myself. And there is a mental shift that happens to I need to do it myself to I need to hire people to do it for me. And the good founders are able to make that pivot. The ones that kind of stay stuck in founder land or very small company land are the ones that haven't quite figured out how to leverage others to do the work, and they're just providing the vision. That's a common thing I see, and I help people break through. The other thing I think is this is going to sound crazy, but there is something about a lot of people, especially I live in California and I did a lot of my work in the Bay Area, so Silicon Valley. There is a real hustle culture there that's like, if I work hard, then I'll get all of this success, money, wealth, whatever. It's a real work hard for this. And I will just tell you, working with a lot of people, if you believe that, it will be true. If you believe that you just need to put in 5 hours a day and get amazing results, that will also be true. Like, these are all just beliefs. It's just in California, in the Bay Area, that is a very insidious one.
I don't think, personally, I don't think it's just isolated to that. I think I used to believe that. I'll be honest with you. I used to believe the harder I worked, the more success life would bring me. But that was a belief system. I've now obviously challenged that thought process. But again, it also goes down to your life experience, like who you hang around with, your environment, like so many different mitigating factors that builds these belief systems. That's why they're called belief systems, right? Because it's what we believe in, and doesn't matter what I say or what you say, it's going to be true because it belongs to me.
Yeah,
right?
and your whole world just feels like that's the only possible reality that can exist. And that's the insidiousness with those kind of beliefs, is that it makes you feel that there's no other possible reality. And yet there is. But I have a question for you. How did you break through that belief about working hard versus, working smart, or whatever your new belief is?
It's a great question. Well, most of the listeners here will know I'm from an athlete background. So, and so when I grew up, when I was a kid, I grew into elite athletics when I was very, very young. But I didn't have the support structure. I didn't have the mentors or whatever it is, but I did have a coach. Yeah. And so I suppose it was kind of drilled into me, where I thought that, if I worked hard enough, then I'm going to be a winner. Right. That's kind of my belief system. But then where the fatal mistake was is when I transitioned that into entrepreneurship and running my own business. I had that same mindset. Yeah. I thought that in order to put in more, I would get more. But actually, then it has a knock-on effect to the relationships that you have with people. It has a knock-on effect to your environment. It has a knock-on effect to your health and all the other things that we've just talked about today, right? But I've also come to learn that actually less is more. Tim Ferriss talks a lot about it on the 4-hour work week, right? Less is more, right? And when people think about the 4-hour work week, some people think it's impossible. It's not impossible. It's not about the quantity. It's about the quality, right? It's a bit like, I'll go back to my days as an athlete, right? An athlete doesn't just compete. An athlete practices, an athlete trains, an athlete goes to his nutritionist or dietitian, an athlete gets sports massage therapy for rest and recovery, an athlete goes and does functional training to make sure that they minimize injuries. Like, it's a whole kind of ecosystem of all the different things that you need to be a successful athlete. Entrepreneurship is no different. And so if you begin to understand that less is more, and quality over quantity, then that to me is where I have discovered that huge shift. So thank you for the question. I hope I answered it.
It's really powerful, I think, to hear that someone can come over the belief and be on the other side of it, because I think a lot of people don't know what that looks like. So I think it's really cool. Your example is really cool.
I think the other thing that to be aware of for some of our listeners as well is to think about some of the symptoms that you're suffering, right? Normally, there'll be something happens in your life, whatever that might be, but we often look for instant gratification. Yeah. So we tend to take advantage of something or circumstances or whatever it is until something happens. I'll give you an example. My mum suffers from mental health issues, unfortunately. And for a long period of time, she was just laying down like a vegetable, right? And I kept on drilling into her. I said, you don't move, then something's going to happen. And guess what? Something happened. And now she regrets it, right? Because people take things for granted. Entrepreneurship is, again, no different, okay? Because until something actually happens, whether it be something happens with you physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, right? Then it's just too late. It's like going back to obesity. There's so many overweight people in America, even in the UK or all over the world. Hey, if you're going to go to McDonald's 5 days a week, of course you're going to be overweight, fat, and miserable. There's no there's no way around that. So I don't know. I just feel like there's this kind of like people just take advantage of the circumstances until something happens. And then there's a switch, and it's normally pain, fear for them to just kick their ass and just go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes life brings us these really intense moments that force us to, through a transformation process we would have never done otherwise. Sometimes it's people getting fired from a job, and that's the thing that just, they're finally like, okay, well, fine, then I'm going to go start my thing finally. Or it's a health crisis, or it's a relationship crisis. You know, we get these really intense moments because it forces transformation. And on the other side of it, we're a better person, but it can be a really tough period.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not everybody heeds the call. Not everybody heeds the call.
Nope, absolutely. And then suddenly it's too late, but hey ho. Interesting enough, I mean, you've worked with a lot of people at the top of their game, right? I mean, you know, from people at SpaceX, for example, I mean, they're at the top of their game, right? When you find someone that you feel has maybe outgrown their life of what they built, how do you help them to reinvent themselves? What is the process, or do you have some sort of framework that you can walk us through?
Such a great question. I love this. So this is my favorite energy. I love people in transition because it's always these opportunities to align with your own genius. And the way I see it, and this is why I was saying earlier, genius and passion are so tightly correlated, because here's why. It's kind of like, imagine that there's you, Adam, sitting here in this chair having a conversation with me, but there's also like the bigger Adam, kind of the soul version of you that can kind of be standing on a mountaintop seeing your life in a way that you maybe can't. So how does the soul of Adam talk to Adam? Well, it's through the energy of excitement. It's literally how you know where to go. It's like your GPS system. And why is that? Because the energy of excitement is probably, I don't know if it's the highest, I think it's probably the highest vibrational energy there is next to love. If you just think about like things that feel good, I mean, joy, excitement, passion, I mean, that's right up there. And so if you consider us all as divine beings, which I do, we're all here on purpose for something. How do you know where to go and what to do? Well, it's passion talking to you, because that is the highest vibrational energy within you. And that is your GPS system and your compass of like where to go next. What's happened is a lot of us have tuned that out. And so we have a hard time reconnecting with that. So when someone's at a transition point or a crossroads, or I'm done with this and I'm not sure what the next thing is, for me, it's like, okay, well, where's that thread of excitement? Where's that thread of passion inside somebody's being? And it's something that I feel. It's like I'm trying to resonate with that feeling within them. And once I can lock onto it, then we can kind of stoke the flame through some questions of like, well, would this be exciting? Would that be exciting? What if you could do this? What would that be? And so sometimes it's about taking a bigger energy and then kind of focusing into what like the actual action would be. But that's really my process. And it can actually be quite quick if someone's ready. Sometimes people are in a burnout phase and they need a bit of rest before they're ready to do something new. But often by the time people come to me, they're ready for the next phase, and they just need help kind of locking in on it. So that's cool. My process. And it often happens in a session. Sometimes it takes a couple, but it's usually just a session that I can kind of lock in on that.
Yeah. When you take on a client, for example, and what do you look for? There'll probably be some patterns or something that you're looking for that they're missing. What do you look for what they're missing that you know straight away, yes, I can help you, or no, I'm staying away from this person for whatever reason? What do you look for?
Well, there's actually a couple questions in that question. The first one is, what would keep me away from somebody? Sometimes people think they're ready and they're not. Meaning they're like, well, I can't sit around and do nothing. I have to make money. Like there's a lot of that kind of chatter, but I can just feel that they're not quite ready yet. Like they just need rest. They need to focus on their health. They need to do some other things. And usually when you're ready to build something new, that's an energy. It takes a lot of energy to build something new. You kind of got to be in a place for it. So, the answer that sometimes comes through is like, hey, like, what if you just chilled out for a little while longer and like recuperated and kind of got your mojo back, and then come to me in 6 months or a year when you're actually like energized. So sometimes it's not what keeps me away. It's just sometimes the answer is, hey, like, you think you're ready, but I'm not sure that you are.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Got a car to sell but no time to waste? Hop on to Carvana.com to get a real offer for your car in seconds. All you have to do is enter your license plate, answer a few quick questions, And if you accept the offer, Carvana will pay you as soon as you hand the keys over. They even offer same-day pickup in many cities. Save your time, score some cash, and sell your car the convenient way to Carvana. Pickup times vary. Fees may apply.
And usually once I bring that up, people are like, well, you're right. But how do I make money in the meantime? And then that's a whole separate conversation. And then the second part is, what am I looking for? It's not what I'm looking for. It's what I'm feeling for.
Interesting. So what you're saying is you're using your intuition.
Yeah, I'm like locked in on a lot of senses. I mean, I'm like locked in on like, how are they feeling in their body if I say this or if I say that? Does that feel exciting or not exciting? Does it feel heavy or light? So I'm feeling how they're feeling when I direct the conversation in a certain way. So I'm feeling for something. And then when they start talking about something they're jazzed about, man, I lock in on that. And that's a feeling. And then from there, you can kind of like lock in and then make it amplified to really bring that out. Because sometimes what happens is that the genius within us is really the sacred part of us. It's like the part of us that is so unique. It's like our thumbprint in the universe. And it's a very tender part, meaning it's really your sacred gift. Your sacred gift that is uniquely you, that is uniquely your expression. It can be very vulnerable to share that because nobody wants their sacred gift to be laughed at, mocked at, ignored, whatever, right? And so a lot of times people build a lot of armor around their heart in order to keep that hidden even from themselves. And so when I say sometimes things take a couple sessions, it's not because I couldn't see it. It's because there's a bunch of, call it armor or walls up against even them seeing it for themselves. And through a process of just, transformation and kind of allowing those walls to dissolve, then it can come forward. But you have to be really tender with people that have kept that hidden for a really long time, because it can be really scary to be seen in that way and to bring that part of you forward that really is the most pure part of you that nobody wants to be judged or laughed at or told isn't good enough or whatever. So there's a delicateness in the process sometimes.
I suppose not kind of showing vulnerability in a way. Does that make sense?
It is like
they don't
that.
Want to show they don't want to show their true colors. I suppose when someone's having a session with you, it's a trust process with anything, isn't it? Especially this.
Oh, 100%. And if anything, it's like, I'm always honored that somebody trusts me with that most pure part of themselves that is so beautiful, so tender, so pure. And it really, I'm always in awe that people trust me with that part of themselves, because it's a sacred gift to me to be able to see that in somebody.
What about role models? And now, obviously, when we think about geniuses, a genius is an ideology, really, in a nutshell, from my perspective, because, well, how does one determine what a genius is? It's very subjective. I could say, well, Albert Einstein's a genius. I could say Elon Musk is a genius. I could say the guy that created the Dyson or the vacuum cleaner, he's a genius. When we think about being able to tap into that intuition and being able to tap into our geniuses, are there any role models that you think about that helps you to kind of create that connection?
Because I've really deeply understood how genius works, or I deeply understand how genius works, I can see in almost anybody how they are geniusing. And I find it just as beautiful in my sister, who's a baker, as a Elon Musk, who's doing just some super interesting things in the world, in terms of his inventions and all of that. Like, to me, they're not really different in terms of what it is. It's just the scale.
Yeah.
So I see it equally beautiful. I don't think one is more beautiful than another, because it's the same process. It's just a matter of scale or impact. And my sister is crushing it in her corner of the world and having an amazing impact and making a lot of people really happy. And that to me is just as cool as a lot of electric cars that can drive themselves, which I think is super cool. So when I think of role models, I don't know that I look at it quite that way. Personally, find really interesting, just as Taryn's personal interest, is what it takes for someone like an Elon Musk. Like, I've never had him in my Genius Lab, although I think he'd be fascinating. But what's intriguing to me about him is his memory. And I would love to deconstruct that, because that guy, by any accounts, and I've worked with a lot of people that worked for him, it's just how much he remembers. I mean, that is just mind-boggling to me. And then his ability to stay on signal and tune out all noise, I think, is a very unique genius. that I've just never seen quite at that level. So every now and again, I get intrigued by somebody because I'm like, God, how do they do it? But I'm also just as intrigued by my sister who just makes these pastries. You're just like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever eaten. I think the role models for me are I just appreciate anybody who is doing anything exceptional. And it doesn't really matter what it is because I find it all interesting. But to your point about genius and it being subjective, I mean, there's so many geniuses that were never recognized in their own life and they were only recognized after they died. So the world is not a great judge of genius in the moment. And so I think so many of us, and I include myself in this, is I'm looking for external validation of, did people like it? Was it good? Well, the world's not a great judge of genius. And if you play the long game, and the long game might be multiple lifetimes, it may be that in 5 lifetimes, you and I are considered the most brilliant thing that ever walked Earth. We don't know. Right. And so I think the trap that I'm really trying to reprogram my own brain on is to not look for external validation of, was my TikTok popular? Did everybody like that video? Did what I say land? While I hope that it does, and I do everything in my power to try to frame things in a way that it does, I really have no influence over how people receive it. And so I think that if we use the external world to validate our genius, that's a losing game. But also, at what point is somebody a genius? Was Elon Musk a genius when he was 21 and, just founding PayPal? Maybe. I mean, he was living off of Ritz crackers or whatever else he was eating. I think it was oranges. He had like a very specific diet, sleeping on a floor of some startup. I mean, I'm not sure the world thought he was a genius then. Now fast forward 30, 40 years, it looks quite incredible. But I think James Dyson's another example. I actually just did a video about James Dyson. I think he's an incredible genius. He was older when that all happened. He spent a lot of years just kind of as an everyday industrial designer. So at what point was he a genius? So you can't just say, oh, that's when they were a genius. They've been geniusing all along. It's just at a certain point, it all kind of looked really good and everybody noticed. And that may happen in this lifetime or the next. We don't know.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's interesting. We're coming toward the end. I suppose we could talk about this fascinating topic forever. It is very, very eye-opening. And for you guys that are listening, and I hope that you're taking notes, more importantly, because, again, I hope that Taryn has really helped you to kind of deconstruct, but more importantly, how to switch your, I suppose, call it awareness antennas on so that you can really tap into something that, your genius effectively, especially if you're going through a time of transition, whether you feel right now, if you feel aligned right now, if you feel content, if you feel happy. And again, how are you evolving? How are you growing as an individual? And are you doing something that are you happy with or happy doing, if you like, and can turn it into something which maybe you can monetize or commercialize or whatever it might be. Don't be the miserable person that just does something because they feel like they have obligations, because I see it all the time. It takes you down this path of complete unhappiness, and yeah, it's just not worth it personally. But yeah, that's just my two cents on that one. Anything to add?
Well, I think that was a beautiful summary. And what I might add for anybody listening is every moment is a choice to do what lights you up and to really live a life that you're just fulfilled by. Like every moment is a choice. And even if you can't see a pathway to a different choice, I promise you there is one. And sometimes it just takes a little mind expansion and a little awareness to see what that new path might be.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm just also thinking about, like, if I'm actually tapping into my own genius, and I suppose my question to myself would be well, how do I know that I'm on that right path?
Well, I think that's probably the most powerful question there is. And what I would ask you is, well, let's just do a little live right now, coaching in the moment, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you about what you're doing?
Well, I think I've always been pretty excited. I have quite even when I do podcasting, right? I a lot of people, they come off the podcast and they're like, damn, that was a good podcast. Like your energy's off the scale, right? My belief is that I would never do something if I just didn't enjoy it. That to me just makes zero sense to me. Like, that's just not fun. It's got to be fun to me, right? So in response to your question, I would say that for me personally, I'm in what I call transitional. I've discovered something over the last 3 or 4 months, and I'm working on it, and I'm super content. happy with it. I would say right now an 8 out of 10.
Okay. That's a good number. And if you had a magic wand and $1 billion and you never had to work a day in your life, but you could wave a wand and do something to take that 8 to a 10, what would you be doing?
Oof, that's a good question. What would I be doing? Well, I think that I'd still actually be doing the more aligned to my mission and vision, which is all about helping a lot more founders to be able to exit their business, right? So we're going through this really interesting. So we're now shifted from the industrial age to the digital age. Yeah. So we've already made that we're already in the midst of this transitional, but there's obviously resistance. And so we're kind of coming to this really interesting point now where there's a lot of baby boomers coming up for retirement. People that were born after, between World War II and up to 1962, like people have been running in business for like an eternity. And the sad reality is that most don't have an exit strategy. Like their belief system is, I'm just going to wind my business down. Like that is a sad reality for people, right? Even if I had $1 billion in the bank, right, I would still go out and fulfill that mission and vision. I would still want to help more founders and CEOs be able to exit their business and show them that there is a different path. There is a different way to do things. It doesn't have to be done the way that you want to do it. But if you choose and want to do so and you want to go a different path, then let me help you.
You know who I love kind of in a similar field? You probably know her, Cody Sanchez, I think has really brought a lot of awareness to this topic as well. And it's so fascinating because I don't think people realize the wealth transfer that would happen with all of these founders that are now retiring if they sold their business versus just closed it down. All right. Well, since you asked before this call if there was a little something we could do at the end, you ready for it? I'm going to help you.
Go for it. All right. Go for it.
Because what I feel for you is like, I wouldn't call it a block, but it's almost like an unlock. And the unlock is to do this on a bigger stage in a bigger way. And I'm not quite sure what the sort of thought process is, but it's like, all right, here, do this. Just close your eyes for just a second.
Okay.
And picture impacting not just 1 million people, but 10 million people or 10 million businesses, right? Like a big number, like a really big number. And see all those people happy with their exits and all the new owners happy with their purchases or however these transactions happen. Right? Like not even 100,000 or 1 million, like 10 million, like a really big number. On a scale of 1 to 10, how exciting does that feel to have it be a big number like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm just trying to pinpoint the number. I'd probably say the same, an 8 out of 10.
Okay, so it's not the number then that's the thing.
No.
Okay. That's what I was wondering. That was what I was curious about that. Because I was like, is it the number that you want a bigger impact or is it more just you want to do it live? Because, okay, now picture this. Now picture you're in a room of 100 business owners that are ready to transition. You've got them in a conference room.
Okay.
And you're walking them through a 2-day seminar about all the how-tos of, going from owner to paid out for your business scenario, sold your business. And you see 100 smiling faces of people that are like, oh my God, Adam, I did it. And I made money. And thanks to you, it was all because of you. How does that feel?
Fulfilled.
Yeah.
It feels mission accomplished. That's what it feels like.
Because that was like my sense of it, right? Is that, and so for you, it feels more like being live in a room full of people that you can help tactilely, not even just digitally like on a podcast, but like a room or a conference room full of people that you're walking through a process, you're walking through a roadmap, a plan, or what a methodology, whatever you want to call it, to get them exited. And you're their guide because they need you to be their guide. That gives me chills just doing it. See, that's how I know it's true, is because I get those, right? And so even with $1 billion, it would still be cool to have a conference room full of people that you were impacting very directly live in person.
Yeah. I mean, for me, and I talk about this a little bit, which is when you've been doing this for as long as I've been doing it, the worst fear is the feeling of insignificance. For me, is all about fulfillment. Like that's what drives me, is to feel like I want to feel fulfilled within myself. It's not about money. Like that is completely way far away. It's all about fulfilling my true destiny, if you want to call it that, my big dream, my whatever it is, because everything else comes. Like I'm a big believer of that, right? I'm a big believer that wealth comes, everything else comes. And, and it goes back to Jim Rohn's quote, which is the more you help, people that you help, the more that you help yourself, but you help yourself 10x more. And I believe in that. Like that to me, that's cemented in my DNA. So yeah, so that's kind of my thought.
So, I don't know all what's on your plate, but what I might just offer as a little nugget of, something to noodle on is, what would it look like if you actually created these live events to help people through this process, and you brought people in and they came to you, or you go to them? Maybe there's a US tour and a UK tour or whatever it is, and you do it live, because I think there's something really magical about you being live in a room full of 100 people or whatever the number is going to be. But I have a hunch that would be wildly successful and fulfilling, not just for you, but for the business owners too.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting you say that. But in the next month or two, we're going to start doing something on a digital platform for the time being. Just experiment, see how that goes.
Yeah, get your content down, get your program down, and then when you're ready, you take it live. And that's totally fine to have a stepping stone like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Listen, you're definitely on the level, right? So some people, some of the guys here that's listening in, we've got like this 90-day sprint coming up, hopefully September, October. We've got a wait list going on. So yeah, so you are on the level, Taryn, 100%. So for you guys that want more information, it's in the show description notes, or drop me a DM, whatever.
But here's the cool thing that I do want to leave the listeners with is that, like, when you're in your genius and when you're doing what really lights you up, it is so magnetic that you can't help but be successful. And this is what lights you up. It makes you feel fulfilled. Everybody wants to be in that energy because it's a delicious energy to be in. And so when you stay in that of like, oh my God, I love doing this, it can't help but be successful, and it's deeply fulfilling for you. And then things evolve, right? You're doing it digitally. Amazing. I think an in-person would be the next level of it, which would be amazing.
Absolutely.
And then you'll get the next idea and the next idea, and you'll be on big stages talking to 30,000 people at some Tony Robbins event. Who knows, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we don't know where life's going to go, but yeah.
I've done the whole kind of in-person of 5,000 people in. So, I've done that, but that was ages ago type thing. But again, you evolve, you talk about new things and epiphanies and experiences and whatever it is. But yeah, I think you're bang on the money.
I love it. I'm excited with you.
Very cool. Well, listen, guys, hopefully it's going to help you tap into your intuition, your genius, whatever you want to call it. But hopefully it helps reignite some of the things that we've been talking about around passion, around, being able to making sure that if you're not happy with where you're at right now, think you can change. Like, we talked about limiting beliefs. There's so much that we talked about in today's session. What I would highly recommend you do is pause this episode, go back to the beginning and re-listen to it. Yes, okay, it's an hour's long, but the point I'm trying to make is I always say this to people, is in certain episodes like this where it is deep, there's a lot of frameworks and there's a lot of strategy and there's a lot of thought processes going on, re-listen to it, because I can guarantee you'll pick up new things the second time round than you did on the first time round. So first of all, Taryn, thanks so much. Really appreciate you being on the show today. It was a lot of fun, right?
Such a great episode. Adam, thank you for the time and asking such great questions and jamming on genius. It really is my greatest passion to do so. So thank you.
You're welcome. And for you guys that want to learn more about Taryn's work, of course, you can, follow her over on YouTube. You can also, there's some social media channels that you can follow her in the show description notes, of course. And I believe there's a little gift there as well that you guys can tap into as well. So from me and Taryn, thanks so much. And hopefully we'll see you again back on The Business Strategist. Take care and we'll speak to you soon. Cheers.